Welcome to Life Sciences by Tumi Selani. This is a YouTube online teaching platform dedicated to teaching life sciences content, sharing skills and insight to maximize your potential at academic success. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And please do share the link to this channel. This will help the channel grow and reach a wider audience of learners who may appreciate the lessons and also reach their academic success. Teachers, parents, and any other stakeholder are welcome to partake in the videos and contribute to the content in the comments. Without wasting any of your time, let's get right into it. My name is Tumi Selani, a teacher from Milner High School here in the Northwest Province. This is our third and final lesson on the menstrual cycle. We will be looking at exam type questions, so we are delving right into the exam type questions based on the knowledge that we've learned on the previous two lessons on the menstrual cycle. So before we delve into the lesson, please, if you have not seen the videos on the previous two lessons, please go back, watch the videos, and remember to react and pose any comments or pose any contribution on the comments below. Before we look at the questions that are intended for this lesson, let us quickly run through what we've went through in the previous two videos. On the previous two videos, lesson 1 and lesson 2, in lesson 1, we looked at the process of the menstrual cycle, the 28-day cycle, in terms of what happens in the uterus and in terms of what happens in the ovaries. On lesson 2, we did some interpretive work to apply the knowledge that we've learned in lesson 1, where we looked at different graphs and how they might be examined in your formal tasks. And like I said, on this lesson, we have lesson 3, and we are doing nothing but exam type questions. Okay guys, now we are done with the content. On the first lesson of the menstrual cycle, we looked at the content of the menstrual cycle. On the second part, we looked at the interpretation of graphs, and then now we have concluded the content, and then now we are looking at exam type questions. Let's look at the first question. The first question: explain the significance of the negative feedback of FSH as well as progesterone. Okay, negative feedback between two hormones, which is FSH and progesterone. It is very important for you guys to understand this concept because it is an exam type question that has its own individual bullet on your examination guidelines. So because it has its own individual bullet, that's how important it is. Okay, now let's just remind ourselves of something. What is the function of FSH? Remember, the function of FSH is to stimulate the growth of a primary follicle into a Graafian follicle, into a mature follicle. And at day 14, that mature follicle will burst, or it will rupture to release an ovum. So, FSH is only secreted when the woman is not pregnant. Okay, guys? It is secreted when the woman is not pregnant. It brings up the growth of a follicle, and inside that follicle on day 14, then the follicle bursts under the influence of LH, and then it will release an ovum. So FSH prepares for pregnancy. It provides a follicle which will eventually release an ovum. But progesterone Progesterone is a hormone that is secreted at high levels when the woman is pregnant. Progesterone keeps the endometrium thick when a woman is pregnant for the remainder of the pregnancy period. So one prepares for pregnancy, and then the other one maintains the endometrium thick during pregnancy. So it does not make sense that these two hormones are secreted both at equal levels at the same time, because their function is contradicting. Okay, so FSH stimulates the growth of a follicle so that from that follicle we can attain an ovum. And progesterone keeps the endometrium thick for the period of pregnancy. Okay, guys? So, remember, progesterone is a hormone that keeps the endometrium thick to maintain pregnancy, and FSH is a hormone that stimulates the growth of follicles, which will release an ovum to start pregnancy. So one maintains pregnancy, the other one starts pregnancy. Okay, now, therefore, when progesterone levels are high, the pituitary gland will assume that the female is already pregnant. So when the pituitary gland assumes that the woman is already pregnant, there is no need to produce a new ovum for the next 9 months of the pregnancy period. It will therefore secrete less FSH. So when progesterone levels are high, they inhibit the pituitary gland from producing FSH. So when the blood passes through the pituitary gland will pick up that the woman has a lot of progesterone, therefore it will assume that the woman is pregnant and not produce FSH. The term inhibit means to stop or to prevent. Okay, but how do we articulate that into an answer? All right, this is what you are going to say when you get a question like this. When progesterone levels are high, 1 mark, the pituitary gland will be inhibited to secrete FSH. Remember what I said about this word? I said that the word inhibit means to prevent or to stop. Okay, so when the progesterone levels are high, 1 mark, the pituitary gland will be inhibited to secrete FSH, or you can say it will be stopped or prevented to secrete FSH. So if we don't have FSH, we don't have its function. Okay, remember the function of FSH is to grow the primary follicles into a Graafian follicle. So no new follicle will become a Graafian follicle. So 3 marks. Now let's look at the effect of that. In the ovaries, no new ovum will be released. No new ovum will be released, or you can say there is no ovulation. Remember, ovulation is the rupturing of the follicle. So since we have no FSH, we won't have a Graafian follicle, so there will be no ovulation. If there is no ovulation, there will be no fertilization. Remember, ovulation releases an ovum. Okay, guys? So if we don't have an ovum, there will be no fertilization, and the female will not reproduce, or the female will remain infertile for the 9-month period. Okay, guys? So this is precisely what we find in contraceptive pills. Contraceptive pills that are taken by women every single day, they contain high levels of high levels of progesterone to trick the body into thinking that the woman is pregnant. Now, when there are high levels of progesterone that are taken in the pills of the woman, in the blood of the woman, there will be high levels of progesterone. This will trick the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland will secrete no FSH. there will be no follicle that is there will be no Graafian follicle. If there is no Graafian follicle, the effect in the ovary is that no ovum will be released. So the woman never produces an ovum. Okay, guys? Because because the contraceptive pills contain high doses or high levels of progesterone. So if there's no ovulation, there is no fertilization, and then the female will not reproduce, or the female remains infertile as long as the progesterone levels are high. What is the effect on the uterus? There will be no estrogen secreted. Remember, estrogen is secreted because of the growing follicle. Now, because of the pituitary gland did not secrete FSH, there is no Graafian follicle. So no estrogen is secreted. The endometrium remains thin. This is actually very false. Let me just erase that. This is false information. This is fake news. So excuse me. Sorry for that. Okay. So because there is no FSH, there is no Graafian follicle, no estrogen will be produced. The endometrium will remain thick, not thin. What is thickening the endometrium? It is the progesterone, guys. It is the progesterone that is thickening the endometrium and not the estrogen. So there will be no shedding of the endometrium, or there will be no menstruation. Why shouldn't the endometrium shed? Remember, we have high levels of progesterone. So the endometrium is thickened and kept thick by the progesterone for the remainder of the pregnancy period. The growing offspring needs to keep on being implanted or attached to the thick endometrium for the remainder of the pregnancy period. Should the endometrium shed during pregnancy, it will result in a miscarriage. Hence, the progesterone levels need to be kept high at all times. And by progesterone levels being high during the pregnancy period, that will block the pituitary gland from secreting FSH. And the effects on the ovaries are as thus, and the effects on the uterus are as thus. Okay, guys, let us move on to the next question. Let us look at the second set of questions. Okay, there we go. The statement reads, the diagram below shows events in the ovary during the menstrual cycle in a 28-day cycle. Remember, guys, the first thing that we must do is study the diagram. Study the diagram before even looking at the questions. Okay. Now, what is happening here? So this is a structure of the ovary. We have been told that it's the structure of the ovary. All right. Now, we follow the arrows. They are very important. So they start there. What is this? It is a primary follicle. It is growing bigger and bigger and bigger until it becomes that. So this is showing the primary follicles growing to become the Graafian follicle. So structure A will be our Graafian follicle. Now, on this day, the Graafian follicle ruptures. It breaks apart. And structure B is released. Structure B then, that is released from the ruptured follicle, we know is the ovum, right? And then 1 might be a period. So 1 is a period where the Graafian follicle ruptures to release structure B, which is an ovum, and that period we know as ovulation. It happens at day 14. Now, what stimulates ovulation is LH, if you can remember. The second function of LH, what does it do? It takes this ruptured follicle and makes it into a corpus luteum. As you can see, the corpus luteum is degenerating. What is that an indication for? Fertilization did not take place. So it becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. It will secrete less and less and less of what? Of progesterone. Okay. Question 5.1. Identify structure A. Of course, this is the first question. So structure A, we've already said, that is the Graafian follicle. Or it is sufficient to say that is the mature follicle. All right? Sub-question B, process 1. So process 1 is over there. What is happening? The Graafian follicle has ruptured and ovum is released, and we know that process as the process of ovulation. All right. Name the hormone responsible for process 1. Which hormone is responsible for stimulating ovulation? The correct answer will be LH, or if you write it in full, as the luteinizing hormone. Okay, then a woman was given medication with high concentrations of progesterone. Okay, explain the effect of this medication on the ovarian cycle. On the ovarian cycle. So, the effect on the ovaries. Okay, that is negative feedback between progesterone and FSH, guys. Remember, I said to you, if you know the negative feedback, you'll be able to answer the question, these type of questions. Okay, so let's look at the answer. 5.3. High levels of progesterone will do what? Inhibits the pituitary gland, 1 mark, from secreting FSH. Remember, we said when progesterone levels are high, the pituitary gland assumes that the woman is pregnant, so it will secrete less FSH. Then, if we have less FSH, then no follicle will develop. The function of FSH is to do what? Is to stimulate the growth of a follicle. So if we have less or no FSH, no follicle will develop. If there is no follicle, no ovum will be produced. So there will be no ovulation. All right? Remember, the question is asking about what happens in the ovaries, not the endometrium, in the ovaries. So, any 3 marks. Right? Now, the next question. Ovariotomy is a term used to describe the surgical removal of only the ovaries. All right? Only the ovaries, not the whole female reproductive system, only the ovaries. They can be removed due to certain illnesses such as cancer. Explain why a female who have done is supposed to be has done. Explain why a female who has done ovariotomy, sorry for that, ovariotomy will not undergo menstruation. So if you remove your ovaries, there will be no menstruation. Why? Okay? That will be question 5.5. Have I skipped a question? Yes, I have. But let's answer question 5.5. Since while we're there, we'll go back to 5.4. Okay. No follicle will develop because Follicles develop inside ovaries, and the woman does not have ovaries, so no follicle will develop. Remember, the follicle, the bigger it grows, it produces estrogen. So estrogen will be no more. So there will be no thickening of the endometrium. The function of estrogen is to thicken the endometrium. So the endometrium in the uterus will not thicken. If there is no thickening of the endometrium, so there is no shedding of the endometrium because it is not thick. Remember, what is menstruation? Menstruation is the breakdown or the shedding of the endometrium. So if you don't have a thick endometrium, there will be no shedding of that endometrium. So that is 4 marks. We've skipped a question. Let's go back to it. Give an observable reason why, give an observable reason which suggests that fertilization did not take place after the process numbered 1. So after 1, what do we see happening? The corpus luteum is degenerating, as you can see over there. Okay? So that is one of the indications of no fertilization. So the corpus luteum degenerates or becomes smaller in size for 2 marks. Corpus luteum, 1 mark. That's what we can see. And what happens to it is that it degenerates. Hence, we say fertilization did not take place. Okay, the last question. Draw a labeled diagram of structure B. That's why we needed to label this before we look at the question. So structure B is the ovum. Okay, so for 4 marks, we are supposed to draw a label diagram of the ovum. So the marking guideline, for 1 mark, there must be a heading. Guys, in life sciences, whenever you're asked to draw a diagram, you must include a heading. Correct type of heading is going to be 1, and any 2 correct labels are going to be 1. Guys, by just drawing the diagram, you will not get 4 marks. Okay? So always give a heading, draw that particular diagram that you're instructed to draw. That would be 1 mark. And label as many labels as possible. Okay? Always do that. Heading, drawing, as many labels as possible. So there is our drawing. So we have 3 layers. That one, outer one, and then we have this cavity, the space, and we have that structure inside the cavity. So the outer layer is the jelly layer, the nucleus, and then we have the cytoplasm, which is in this cavity or in this space. And the heading will be structure of an ovum. Whether you say it's structure of an ovum, sketch of an ovum, whatever, it doesn't matter, as long as the word ovum is there. Okay? So that was our first set of questions for 16 marks. Let's move on to the next. Our next set of questions. Let's have a look. The diagram below represents an endocrine gland, A, and the events that take place in the ovary during the menstrual cycle in humans. So we have gland A. We know that glands produce or secrete hormones. So the hormone that is secreted by gland A, the first hormone is given. It is FSH, and it acts on structure E. Which hormone by the pituitary gland acts on structure E is FSH. And what is structure E? Structure E is, we see that it is growing, whatever it is. It was smaller, then it was bigger, then it will become bigger, and then it will rupture. What is that? That would be the follicle. Okay? And then the second hormone related to the menstrual cycle that gland A produces causes this. what is this? We see that this structure, the Graafian follicle, B, has ruptured. So this process is known as ovulation. What is ovulation? Ovulation is the rupturing of the Graafian follicle to release what? An ovum. So this structure will be an ovum. Structure C will be an ovum. Okay? Now, this ruptured Graafian follicle now turns into this structure, which is structure D. What is structure D? Structure D will be the corpus luteum. Okay, so this hormone that causes ovulation will be LH. This one is FSH. Therefore, gland A will be the pituitary gland. Okay, the easiest clue there is that this gland secretes a hormone that is given, which is FSH. And in terms of the menstrual cycle, FSH is secreted by the pituitary gland. All right, guys? Okay, let's look at the questions. Of course, identify gland A. Gland A, which secretes FSH, will be the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is also known as the hypophysis. Okay, it's also known as the hypophysis. Structure B. Structure B, there it is. It is the Graafian follicle. It is mature at this stage because the next thing it's going to do is that it is going to ovulate. Process C. Process C is when this structure has ruptured and releases an ovum. So process C will be ovulation. Structure D. The ruptured follicle, after it has ruptured, it will become what? The ruptured follicle will become structure D. Structure D will be the corpus luteum. State the effect of estrogen levels on the blood if gland A stops secreting FSH. So the pituitary gland, if it stops secreting FSH, what is going to happen? Oh, it just says state the effect. Marker location 1. Alright? Marker location 1. State the effect of estrogen levels in the blood if gland A stops secreting FSH. So, what does FSH do? FSH stimulates the growth of a primary follicle into a Graafian follicle. The bigger the follicle grows, it secretes estrogen. Right? So, if FSH stops, then there will be no Graafian follicle. If there is no Graafian follicles, right? Or there will be no growth of the follicle. The more the follicle grows, the more it secretes estrogen. So, if FSH stops, then the follicle will not grow. And if it will not grow, it will secrete less estrogen. So the estrogen levels remain low. State one function of LH. LH has two functions, remember. First function stimulates ovulation, or it ruptures the Graafian follicle to release an ovum. The second function turns the ruptured follicle into a corpus luteum. Only one. Total is 6. Now we're moving to a more difficult set of questions. These are application questions now, guys. These are higher order questions. The following diagram represents the menstrual cycle of a human starting at day 1. So if we look at this cycle, we have day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, period P. 6, 7, 8, 9, Q. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, R. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, S. 21, 22, 23 until 28 is T. Okay? Now, give the letter, guys, important to read the instruction. Important to read the instruction. Give the letter of the phase. When? The letter of the phase when menstruation is likely to happen. We know that menstruation happens in the first 5 days on average. So day 1 to 5 is phase P. Sub-question B, the level of progesterone and estrogen are highest. Remember, progesterone levels are highest between day 14 and day 22, and estrogen levels are highest during day 14 or day 15, and that would be S. The birth control pills is one of the most commonly used contraceptive products. It contains estrogen and progesterone. So it contains estrogen and it contains progesterone. And is taken daily except for the last 5 days. Except for the last 5 days of the 28-day menstrual cycle. Explain how the presence of high levels of these hormones prevents pregnancy. Okay, now where do we start? For pregnancy to occur, guys, we need 2 things. We need an ovum, remember, and we need a thick endometrium. Now, how are high levels of progesterone and estrogen preventing pregnancy? Increased progesterone and estrogen concentrations inhibits the pituitary glands from producing FSH or secreting FSH. Remember, the word inhibits means prevent or stop. Okay? Remember what we said about the negative feedback between progesterone and FSH. When progesterone levels are high, then the pituitary gland would assume that the woman is pregnant. So high levels of progesterone and estrogen inhibits the pituitary gland from secreting FSH. So if we have less FSH, remember what the function of FSH does? It stimulates the growth of a follicle. So it will prevent the secretion of FSH and LH. No development of a Graafian follicle. There will be no ovulation. What does ovulation give us? It gives us an ovum. Therefore, there will be no ovum. If there's no ovum, there's no fertilization. All right? So the woman can never be pregnant if there is no ovum and there is no fertilization. So for this answer, any 5 points that you might have mentioned. Which brings us to our last set of questions, guys. Okay, let's analyze this one very carefully because it's a higher order set of questions as well. Contraceptives are used to prevent pregnancy. Some females use pills that contain progesterone. In one packet, there would be 28 pills, of which 21 contain different concentrations of progesterone according to the day in the cycle, and the remaining 7 will contain no progesterone. So the remaining 7 will contain no progesterone. I wonder why. We'll answer that question later. A female has to take 1 pill daily at the same time in a given sequence as shown below. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, first 7 days. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, day 14. Then another 7 days. Then the last 7 days are pills without progesterone. Okay? The graph below shows the difference in the progesterone levels during a menstrual cycle of a woman taking contraceptive pills and a woman not taking contraceptive pills. So here we have time. So from day 0 to day 28. And then on the y-axis, we have levels of progesterone. All right. Women with pills, let's see what happens. Progesterone levels increase. Okay, let's firstly deal with women without pills. Remember, progesterone levels must be low until day 14. Okay, why until day 14 are the levels of progesterone low? Remember, progesterone is secreted by the corpus luteum, and we only get the corpus luteum after ovulation. Hence, the progesterone levels are low. Now, once we have progesterone, then the corpus luteum, it starts producing progesterone, so the progesterone levels go up. If from day 20, from this day over here, it increases slightly, and if fertilization does not take place, the corpus luteum degenerates, and the progesterone levels are gonna go down. But with a woman with pills takes the pills containing high levels of progesterone from day 1. So from day 1, the progesterone levels will go up. And then from day 8, as you can see over there, yes, from day 8, the progesterone levels are constant. It means those pills from day 8 to day, let me just check, 24, yes. The pills contain the same concentrations of progesterone. And then remember, the last 7 days, those pills are pills without progesterone. Therefore, the progesterone levels will go down. Okay, let's look at the questions. The estrogen levels between day 8 to 22 will remain low in the woman who takes contraceptive pills. Explain why this is the case. The estrogen levels, not progesterone, guys. The estrogen levels between day 8 to day 22 will remain low in the woman who takes contraceptive pills. Explain why. Guys, read the instruction. The estrogen levels, not progesterone. In the graph, we are only shown the progesterone levels. Now, we must apply. Okay? Let's look at the answer. The high levels of progesterone in the pills will inhibit the secretion of FSH by the pituitary gland. So the pituitary gland will not produce FSH. If there's no FSH, then there is no developing follicle, because FSH stimulates the development of a follicle. So if there's no FSH, there's no development of a follicle. What does the follicle produce? Hence, no estrogen will be secreted. So the follicle secretes estrogen. So if there is no follicle, there is no estrogen that will be secreted. That for 4 marks. Question 9.2. Ovulation takes place on day 14 in the woman not taking contraceptive pills. Explain the evidence in the graph that supports this conclusion. guys, remember the indicators that I showed you earlier of fertilization not having taken place. One of the indicators is progesterone levels that are dropping any day beyond day 22. Any day beyond day 22. So progesterones, the answer is increase in progesterone levels. Let's look at the question again. Ovulation took place on day 14. Oh, not pregnancy, ovulation. Not pregnancy, ovulation. So ovulation takes place at day 14, so there. Right? So one of the indicators, excuse me for my earlier mistake, one of the indicators that ovulation has taken place will be the rise in progesterone levels. If there is a rise in progesterone levels after day 14, that indicates, remember, progesterone is secreted by what? It is secreted by the corpus luteum. So the increase in progesterone level indicates that the corpus luteum has been formed. Last question. Suggest one reason for including pills with no progesterone. Pills with no progesterone hormone in contraceptive pills. Okay? So the contraceptive pills that contain progesterone end at day 22. The last 7 days, day 21, the last 7 days, they contain no progesterone. So what could be the possible reason? Reason number one, women will stay in the habit of taking pills every day. So it's just to make sure that the woman does not skip a day. Or if you say, will not forget to take progesterone containing pills. So it's just to build a habit of taking pills every day. And then the second one, to allow menstruation to occur. Remember, when progesterone levels are low, what is going to happen? The endometrium will become thinner and thinner, and at day 1, after day 28, after day 28, then is day 1, and then the endometrium will shed, and that we call menstruation. Right, the end of our session, guys. All the best of luck. I hope and pray that this revision was informative. Until next time, bye-bye.